All right, to wrap up the podcast for growth and development, let's talk about health promotion, starting with an infant. When we're talking about an infant, they have what's called an excursion reflex. And this is where their tongue will move forward to spit things out. This is to help with them breastfeeding and bottle feeding, all right? They cannot eat any quote-unquote solid foods until this reflex is gone. So at about between 4 to 6 months of age, when the child shows signs of interest in eating, begins chewing movements, you can see there, opens mouth in anticipation, not just of the nipple, but also a spoon, things like that. So what you'll notice is when you are eating with a spoon or a fork, the infant will sit next to you and open their mouth. All right. When this begins, we can talk about starting solid foods. All right. Solid foods for infants start with rice cereal. They start with rice cereal. It's very runny. You give them, you mix it with the formula or the breast milk, and they don't take a lot in at first. It takes a little time. It depends on the child. Some take to it very quickly, and some it takes, a week or two. After that, you can start to give them fruits or vegetables. How you're going to do this, though, is you are going to give them their rice cereal for 3 to 4 days. And then you can switch to a vegetable or a fruit. So let's say you want to start with peaches. You give them peaches for 3 to 4 days. And then let's say you want to give them green beans, and you give them green beans for 3 to 4 days. And you keep doing that. The reason why you're waiting 3 to 4 days is because you want to see if there's a reaction or an allergic reaction to see what's happening, okay? So you're going to keep moving through foods like that until you have quite a large variety of foods that they can eat. There are 2 things that infants up until 12 months of age should never eat. One is cow's milk. I don't care if it's 1%, 2%, or whole. No cow's milk. It does not provide what they need, and their intestines cannot break it down and absorb it correctly. So what will happen is around 6 months, when the iron stores from the mother are depleted in the infant, if they are drinking whole milk or any type of milk, they will be severely anemic and have severe iron deficiencies. Also, milk and our other product, which is honey, and I'll talk about that in a second, the research over years and years has now shown that those 2 things given before 12 months of age give children higher risks of developing ulcerative colitis and Crohn's, and that as children and adults, okay? So we don't want to do that. We do not want to give these types of things on a immature digestive system, okay? The honey has botulism in it, and the botulism causes C. diff. So we absolutely don't want to give them honey. All right. So those are the 2 things. Now, when you say things like, what about strawberries? What about peanut butter? Those are some foods that can be, children can develop allergies to. Well, the research now has shown that giving those things to children prior to 1 age actually decreases the risk of developing allergies. So they should be given a wide variety of foods, including strawberries and peanut butter, things like that, prior to 1 year. What happened was when we stopped giving those high allergen foods and said, no, wait till after a year, we actually had the opposite effect, and we had a bigger prevalence of children and adults with those types of allergies. So understand that there's only 2 foods that we should not give a child before 12 months of age, okay? They're going to begin with the pinch or grasp, and then they are going to be able to move to small foods. You know, they have yogurt melts, and they have like cheese puffs that are made that have vegetables in them. They're great. So there's lots of things that they can do, and you're going to be feeding them very runny food at first, and as they get better with it, then you're going to start feeding them more solid foods. There's stages, and you can move through the stages as the child gets better at eating. All right. And you can see here a toddler requires 1,300 to 1,400 calories a day. I'm going to talk about the anticipatory guidance sheets a lot when we get into class, but I want to tell you that it's very important to understand how much a toddler should eat at each meal. A toddler should eat 3 tablespoons of food for 3-year-olds. So each year of life, they should eat that many tablespoons. So if it's 2, they should be eating 2 tablespoons each meal. If it's 3, they should be eating 3 tablespoons. That's of every food group, not 3 tablespoons of mac and cheese, 3 tablespoons of chicken. No, that's 3 tablespoons together. All right. We should not expect them to eat more, and understand that toddlers can be a little finicky. So they might eat a lot of food one day and very little food the next day, and that's normal. So we have to watch that, okay? They do like to eat the same foods in the same place. So, for example, if they always sit in a certain area, they always want to sit there. If you try to move them, it will not go well. They like to use the same cup, the same spoon, the same plates, those types of things, all right? I don't know if any of you have ever had a toddler, and this goes into school-aged and preschool-aged, but if you've tried to move them, their seat around the table or in a car, it doesn't go well. They don't like it. They like their rituals, all right? As far as diet and nutrition, you can see as they become a preschooler, it does slow down as far as their growth rate, but they do need to consume about 1,700 calories a day. All right. At this age, children can become very picky eaters. It needs to be, there needs to be a distinguishing between if they're being picky or if they are being defiant, okay? What usually happens around this age is their textures start to take control of some of their foods that they previously might have loved. So we need to educate about nutritious snacks. We need to discourage high sugar snacks. There should be a variety of snacks for the child to pick from that are healthy. That way they can still pick, but they have good choices, excuse me. We need to try to respect their independence, but encourage them to eat healthy foods, okay? They still like rituals, as you can see there, and they shouldn't be spending tons of time eating. We don't want to encourage grazing behaviors. We do know now that those types of behaviors, like sitting in front of a TVD and things like that, turn off that mechanism in your brain that tells you when you're full, okay? As far as school age, you can see there, so they're eating about 1,000 calories plus 100 for each year they're alive. So you can see there the example. is 1,600 calories for a 6-year-old. So if you have a 10-year-old, you have 1,000, and then you have 10 times 100. So we're at 2,000 calories for a 10-year-old. All right. Mealtime should be fun, time to talk. What did they do at school? What did they like? What didn't they like? Those types of things. And it's important to establish mealtime routines like that. As far as adolescence, this is the age that you can eat more than any other age group. All right. Adolescents eat and sleep, and they are growing again. A rapid growth spurt. So we talk about infants eat and sleep. That's primary things. Well, guess what? Adolescents eating and sleeping, because again, they are growing fast. You can see there we have to limit the grazing behavior. Maybe they can have a snack after school in front of, something like that, but meals should still be at the table. They should not be calorie restricting. We do not talk about dieting with children. We talk about making nutritious choices and increasing physical activity. We never talk about dieting or specific things like that, okay? We don't want to give our children eating disorders, right? Males, you can see there, 2,800 calories. Yeah. And females, 2,100 calories. I will tell you that if they play sports, that caloric intake and needs to be increased. Okay. We will have an NCLEX question or two. In class, and we are going to talk about language development. So as children grow and develop, their language ability will increase. They will start out with just noises, crying, cooing sounds. You may be able to differentiate a cry around 2 or 3 months. Listen, not everyone can do that, and you certainly, as their nurse, will not. It is something sometimes a parent can do. Please don't tell parents that by 2 months they should be able to tell what their baby's cry is for, because that's not always true. All right. By 1 year, though, as you can see, they can say mama and dada with meaning, and they usually say it when angry over and over and over. As they continue, you can see there at 1 year, they're learning words like car and dog and bye-bye, and they're starting to understand things more. You can see their vocabulary is just increasing and increasing. Their 3-year-olds can have a stutter, and that is normal. By 4, most of the time it is gone. 4, there you go. We talked about briefly that they constantly talk and have questions. They do listen to those words that they know they're not supposed to say, and they will repeat them, usually when it's a very crowded and quiet place, like in church. Okay? And then you can see 6-year-olds with their 2,500 words. So it just keeps increasing. As far as talking about specific anticipatory guidance, and we're going to talk about those sheets a little bit more when we get together, but for an infant, they are not leaving the hospital until they are in an appropriate car seat, and their parents know how to use it. They have to pass a car seat safety test prior to leaving the hospital. They are also supposed to be rear facing until they are 2 years old. They do, if your child grows and they're out of that cradle car seat, they can move into a convertible car seat which will sit upright. The only time that they say that you can deviate from that 2 years old is if you have a very tall child and they're being squished significantly. we're still back to sleep. That initiative has reduced the amount of SIDS we have currently tremendously. So we are always promoting back to sleep, laying the child on their back to go to sleep. Water temperature should be less than 120 degrees Fahrenheit to prevent burns. Smoke detectors should be around the house and working. Small toys need to be picked up so that when the infant is crawling and starting to walk, they don't pick it up and put it in their mouth and swallow it. This can be very difficult when we're talking about potentially having a 7 and 8-year-old and let's say a 9-month-old. So you don't want a 9-month-old to get a hold of a Lego and swallow it. And then you're in trouble. And then you're in the emergency department checking to make sure it's going through their esophagus and going through poop for 4 days. Ask me why I know this, because it has happened to me before. Sun safety for infants. Infants should not be wearing sunblock and should not be out in the sun prior to 6 months of age. They are unable to regulate their body temperature correctly. If an infant gets sun on them, most likely, or they have been in the heat a long period of time, most likely they will develop a fever to try to compensate for that. So they should not be overheated or exposed to sun prior to 6 months. After 6 months of age, you are to put on, and this is from 6 months for the rest of your life, you are to put on 30 SPF or greater 20 minutes prior to exposure, and every 2 hours reapplying and or when you get out of the water, all right, or done exercising. So that's how you're supposed to use sunblock, okay? Remember, our skin is our largest organ. We need to protect it. We're going to talk about burns, and getting a sunburn can be a 1st or 2nd degree burn, all right? Sometimes it can be worse, but hope not, right? All right, so a toddler, again, so we're talking about toddler till 2, rear facing. 2, they can be at 3 years old, they can start being in a booster seat. Their curiosity exceeds their judgment. This goes all the way through adolescence, okay? But you have to be very careful of electrical outlets. Pot handles have to be turned to the back of the stove. Animal safety, because children really don't have any safety awareness, so you have to start teaching them about being safe with animals. Supervision must be constant and continual. As far as preschoolers, they can be in a booster seat with the lap or the shoulder belt. They are they do start with their stranger danger at this age. Swimming safety, they should never be unattended. Poisons, they still use those Mr. Yuck stickers and they work great. And the children can put the Mr. Yuck stickers on all the things that they should not be touching. Guns need to be locked up in a safe with ammo locked in separate places. And street safety, they should not be playing near a street. This is when you start to tell them that if the ball rolls into the street to leave it until you check and make sure. But they are not good at this yet. So this is when this education begins. As far as school age, you can see here car seats, seat belts, bike safety. The car seat in Pennsylvania laws, you must be in a booster seat until you are 80 pounds and 8 years old. So I have a 9-year-old who is 60 pounds. He is very tall. He is still in a booster. So just so you're aware, they have to meet both those requirements, all right? The weight of 80 pounds and the age of 8 years old. Bike safety, we're talking about helmets, knee guards, shin guards when you're shin guards when you're playing sports, but those knee pads and elbow pads and wrist pads when they're on a skateboard or things like that. The proper safety equipment when playing sports. And home safety, they should know where their fire extinguishers are, not to play with matches or lighters. Adolescents. Now we're talking about car safety because they're starting to drive. So we're talking about distracted driving and still wearing seatbelts and things like that. Alcohol needs to be discussed, use and misuse, and surely we should be discussing this sooner as far as use and misuse, but certainly at this point they need to be observed and watched for that. Sports, they need to make sure you're nutritionally fit to play. Sex, they are learning preferences and safe sex abstinence, STDs. So we need to make sure that we're teaching them that the only way not to get pregnant or an STD is abstinence, all right? So they still need to understand that that is the only way. Healthy People 2020, this barriers to care. This is an incentive to provide access to quality health care based on promoting and maintaining health, all right? So it's focusing on preventing and managing diseases, reducing unnecessary disability, reducing premature death, and achieving healthcare equality for all, okay? So this is focusing really on insurance coverages, healthcare services, and timeliness of care. And the last thing we're going to talk about is our vaccination schedule and our vaccines. I'm going to tell you some important information that you need to know, but you need to memorize, and that's the only way to put it, memorize the vaccination schedule from 0 to 6 years old. I'm going to give you a video to help you with a mnemonic, which is on Registered Nurse RN, but the vaccination schedule is something that is often on the NCLEX. So vaccination questions, scheduling questions, and growth and development for peds are big topics that are on the NCLEX, all right? I want to talk to you about some of the things. You do have to memorize that, but only till 6 years of age. That is all they test, okay? All right, so you do not give a vaccination if a child is sick. When I say sick, I mean has a fever, has nausea, vomiting, diarrhea. A mild cold is not a reason to not vaccinate, all right? But if they have a fever, nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, they are not to be given a vaccination because they really do need a healthier immune system for it to function properly. Immunosuppressed children should not have live vaccines. Our live vaccines are the MMR, the varicella, the influenza spray that they give at 2 years old, smallpox, and the rotavirus. As far as vaccine reactions, mild reaction is low-grade fever, 1 seizure, redness at the site, tenderness at the site, and 1 episode of vomiting. Serious reactions include prolonged seizure, decrease in level of consciousness, not only prolonged but multiple seizures, decrease in level of consciousness, and multiple episodes of vomiting. When we are in class, we are going to go over the growth and development case study. All right. and we'll do that in class, and we will talk about anticipatory guidance sheets. All right,